Kellogg's Rice Krispies. It's the only cereal that talks to you, and that makes for great company in the morning.
The next station will be Fortuna 69.
I've said before that I think that scaling loot and modes should be implemented to the game aside having enemies that scale, because having enemies and rewards that gradually ramp up over time would both entice longer play sessions while also reasonably increasing difficulty over time. That being said, I would say that allowing some semblance of difficulty to exist in scaling content could only be done in two ways. Either by taking an existing game mode and tweaking it, such as with Disruption, into having the player go against cannon fodder enemies that ramp up in damage and reward distribution as time goes on. Or by making a brand new game mode that completely strips the player of their power at the start in order to have them slowly get it back while at the same time increasing enemy challenge, such as with the Triboros's Tower Heist proposition, as well as with the Palace of the Dead and Heaven on High Deep Dungeons of Final Fantasy XIV, which to put it simply, work like this. The instant you step into a deep dungeon, your gear is automatically changed to a set level, regardless of how strong or weak it is. However, the player would be able to slowly get their power back by going further into the dungeon and finding treasure chests. However, there's a catch. You have a time limit. You are not guaranteed to find treasure chests that help you. Traps and additional enemy spawns can affect you at any time, and dying to a boss causes you to lose any unsaved progress. In my opinion, that would be one way of going about making difficult content in Warframe, aside from just introducing a hard mode and ultra hard mode.
It's also scary. Hard mode. The other thing that is a part of this is after you've completed the hard mode, there's another tier that we're going to unlock as well. This basically allows you to jump into game modes on tile sets where you want a harder challenge without basically running for half hour or running for, an hour to get to those harder level enemies. So the hard mode currently is enemy base level plus 50, and then the ultra hard mode, as I call it, is base enemies plus 100 as a starting point. We're currently looking at what the rewards are for this. Currently we're looking at resource attenuation. XP is also just boosted naturally by the enemy level that goes up. And we're also looking at potentially mastery implications and maybe some ship decorations for like trophies for completion.
I like the idea of hard mode and ultra hard mode having significantly higher enemy level, and I do hope that ultra hard mode also brings some new mechanics or changed enemy behavior similar to how Payday 2's Death Sentence difficulty brings in new enemies that can fuck you up easily, because that's simply how higher level content works. However, I feel like the introduction of hard and ultra hard mode would only make certain warframes more meta, especially if the rewards from ultra hard mode are appealing. For example, let's say that every 5 minutes of Mo survival on ultra hard mode drops a vaulted relic and every 20 minutes gives a guaranteed but random Riven mod. Yeah, that would be pretty nice loot, but given that this would include enemies that start right at level 140, including nullifiers, what exactly would prevent a player from sticking to using Loki and Inaros instead of something less popular such as Nyx or Mirage? While I personally enjoy the idea of having enemies be high level right from the start, if you wanted to farm the loot of hard or ultra hard mode, why would you not take the default grind frames like Mesa or Hydroid? Naturally, warframes like Nidus and Inaros laugh at the idea of dying completely, and that's fine. However, if loot in hard and ultra hard mode is actually good, I'm kind of expecting another meta to start forming, kind of like how Chroma became meta when Eidolon hunting became a thing. The idea of the same tank or nuke warframe meta being reinforced in hard and ultra hard mode is something that I like and dislike at the same time. I like it because players with quote-unquote endgame builds would have a place to really put their gear to the test without having to run survival missions for over an hour, and I also like it because enemies that are actually hard to kill in a game where everyone is running around with a stat-boosting Riven mod sounds like a power fantasy on steroids, and I like that. On the other hand, I dislike it because if a meta for hard and ultra hard mode pops up, I fully expect public and recruiting squads to start demanding specific warframes or specific builds that are capable of successfully clearing said content, which as we all know, can likely result in things being nerfed simply because it's too good, so to speak. Having affinity be increased in hard and ultra hard mode is also kind of problematic for DE, because it would open up new possible places for players to farm even higher amounts of affinity than ever before. For example, normally it takes a single run of Adaro on Sedna with an Equinox sleep build in order to get a melee weapon all the way to 100. However, what if you were to go into an ultra hard Adaro mission with the exact same sleep build, but with all 3 of your weapons at 0? Assuming that ultra hard mode only turns up the enemy level and nothing else, a player would effectively gain significantly more affinity and reward from doing the exact same mission in approximately the exact same amount of time as the normal version, and that I think could be considered by DE to be an exploit simply because you'd be doing the exact same mission in the same amount of time, but with enemy level and affinity gain turned up. For another example, what if you take a Limbo into an ultra-hard defense mission that doesn't contain nullifiers? You'd be doing literally the exact same camp in the bubble strategy, but with even more rewards to get. It's not fun, obviously, but then again, people don't decide to make boring cheese builds for fun, they make them to get through endgame content as efficiently as possible, because after all, Warframe is all about the grind. I hope that hard and ultra hard mode take a page from Triboros's tower heist idea and make the player take a random warframe into hard and ultra hard mode, or at least introduce conditions that can help or harm the player, such as with arbitrations, sorties, and nightmare mode, because otherwise I'm pretty sure that Inaro's players out there are jacking off just by thinking about getting good loot for just using the exact same immortal Inaro's build. Thank you for watching.
Your auntie fucking with me cause you know I'm getting green. I hit it from the back like a fucking tambourine. Your uncle came home and he saw her on her knees, so I had to do the dash just like Lightning McQueen. Lightning McQueen, think I'm Lightning McQueen. She said I'd turn her on just like Lightning McQueen. Lightning McQueen, bitch I'm Lightning McQueen. I was born to flex, I think I got it in my genes. Yeah, you know I shake and bake, ain't no debate. And yo bitch look like the Loch Ness monster living in the lake. I got hoes in outer space, they feed me grapes. Put your girl under a spell, I feel like Professor Snape. I give a pipe no cleaner, I'm about to blow, call me Hiroshima. Okay. I put my dick in her femur, look at my wrist, I should wear like Katrina. Nice. I've been working in the stew. Cool. The girl belongs in the zoo. Wow. I play with her like kazoo. These hoes are my minions, so they call me Groot. I feel like famous Dex, I'm up next, I can't even stress.